And if one feels that they are not ready to think about what they're grateful for, that is okay in time, in small steps. Sometimes it's best to wait until you are ready. But it does help us process the difficult experiences that we've gone through. It does not deny the negative events. Practicing gratitude is aware of what isn't going well, but it helps us look at how we can reframe that, how we think about that, how we explain that to ourselves. And that also, when we practice gratitude, it does promote healing of troubled memories. And as I said to Marzia earlier, my pathway to the research and the science in gratitude came from grief that I was experiencing in my own life, that really helped me transform how I was experiencing grief. Not easy, and not certainly not quickly, but eventually I got there. Before I get into the science and the emotion, I thought it might be helpful to really ground us in what gratitude is. Philosophers and spiritual leaders have really known about the altruistic nature of gratitude for centuries. And the research in gratitude that we're going to be looking at today really only started about 25 years ago, serious research about 25 years ago. And one of the most well known, world renowned researchers is Dr. Robert Edmonds. And when he first started to research gratitude, the typical definition was an affirmation of goodness and the recognition of goodness outside of ourselves. And I watched a lecture that he gave this past, well, March of 2022. And the definition that he is now using is that it is the deepest touch point of human existence. There's also an overview of gratitude that I want to share. One is that it is a strength, and that it is something that we often think is just a simple emotion. And what we'll talk about today is really how complex it is actually. It engages our mind in three ways. First, we intellectually recognize that we have received a gift. So we hear the terms gift and giver, benefactor, beneficiary when we're talking about gratitude. So we intellectually recognize that we have received a gift of some kind, and we emotionally appreciate being that beneficiary, if you will. And the third way is that we willingly acknowledge that somebody has done something kind or good on our behalf. And that third way often doesn't happen because 24/7 disruptions and difficulties, challenges really do slow down our ability to willingly acknowledge, whether that's a verbal acknowledgement, a thank you note, or some way of expressing gratitude to someone in our lives. What we're talking about today is evidence based. Well, I say the research really seriously got started about 25 years ago. We're now able to apply some empirical research to our findings. It's value based. And by that, I mean when we feel grateful for someone or something, an experience, if you will, it is meaningful to us because somehow it aligns with our own value system. Um, Roman philosopher Cicero called gratitude the parent of all virtues, the virtue of all virtues. And from there, the other virtues are supported. And the great thing about gratitude is that when we are in this sense of state of gratitude, when we are expressing it and receiving it, it actually blocks toxic emotions, and it actually blocks the release of the stress hormone cortisol. So wonderful things that happen while we are really investigating what we are grateful for in our lives. I apologize. The quality of this slide is not great. I can't get it any sharper, but this is the Why gratitude? Or what, what is it about gratitude that we're looking at today? And this actually was published in 2019, and you see that it's a meta narrative of many different studies in healthcare that have to do with staff well-being and care ethics, quality of care, job satisfaction, philanthropy, humanitarianism, multiple studies now done around the world, and even more so since we have been in this pandemic. Scholars are looking even deeper at the science of gratitude and how that supports so many different areas, whether it's ethics or psychology or healthcare research. And here's why it's important that we're talking about this. There are many studies, as I mentioned, that are now in the forefront on the benefits of gratitude and the health and well-being, and the need to really support our healthcare workers, our patients, our families, our communities because of the pandemic. I've selected three that I thought would be interesting for today's talk. The first one was looking at the high levels of burnout among frontline doctors during the pandemic in Bangladesh. And this study was done in the southeastern region of the country. And one of the things that we saw was that there were elevated levels of emotional exhaustion and depersonalization of work, which are two of the main characteristics, if you will, of burnout. And the recommendation from the study was that there needs to be strategies developed and implemented to ensure. The next study was looking at the world of healthcare workers during the pandemic, and that overall the healthcare workers experienced high levels of psychological distress. And that one of the recommendations was to allocate resources for the well-being and mental health of healthcare workers. And then finally, the third one was the prevalence of burnout among healthcare workers during the pandemic. None of this is new, right? In fact, I should have started by saying, before we even hit the pandemic, the levels of burnout and stress and overwhelm and exhaustion and overwork were already at high levels. So we have been in this chronic state of burnout and stress for 2 years, maybe longer, depending on when we start the clock. And so, more reason to really take a look at the sciences that we're going to talk about today to help us as we still work through the pain and the suffering and the difficulties and the challenges that the pandemic has presented to us. And so, this final study that I'm sharing really, what it says is that we really do need to design and implement more programs that are going to deal with the effects of burnout. So, the sciences. Anytime I talk about gratitude, I really need to also talk about the foundational science of positive psychology and the latest findings in neuroscience. So, let me start with positive psychology. It's defined as the study of how strengths enable us as individuals, communities, and institutions to thrive. And when positive psychology first started to hit mainstream, it was really misunderstood. I think Time magazine posted the cover of nothing but smiley faces and happiness slogans, which really misrepresented the studies and the science itself. It is complementary to traditional psychology, and it is based on how we use our strengths to reach our highest potential. We are 6 times more likely to be engaged in whatever we do, whatever relationships we have, when we tap into our strengths. And we're 3 times more likely to report a higher quality of life when we embrace our strengths and lead with our strengths. Yes, we all have weaknesses and we can all improve on certain things. But if that's where our energy goes, then we're really not able to maximize our own well-being, our relationships, and our performance. So, from a strength-based perspective, gratitude is considered a strength. Gratitude is a way of measuring, a way of measuring psychological and emotion and physical and interpersonal benefits. And that measurement comes from a systemic cultivation of gratitude. And the neuroscience, we are hardwired to see what's wrong. We come into this world with a negativity bias. It's kept us alive as a civilization. So the fight, flight, freeze response is going to be our automatic response. That's why it's so easy to see what's not working well. But we know with gratitude, we're able to reframe that, to look, it reminds us that even though there are things that are hard, that we can stop long enough, we can reframe to remind ourselves and our family and our friends and our coworkers and members of our community that there are good things, even sometimes the smallest thing that we can be grateful for helps us minimize the threat that our brain is feeling and be able to shift, feel better about who we are and where we are and what's really important in life. And so part of the science that I'm so fascinated with is that the more that we practice gratitude, the more we are able to create new mental habits. And by that, I mean we're able to create or actually strengthen brain pathways, neural pathways, because the fight, flight, freeze pathways are well ingrained. We've followed those pathways for all of our life. And now is an opportunity to create new pathways for us to be able to minimize the threat and look at how we can have greater satisfaction, more success, more happiness in life, however you define that, however we define that individually. And so that neuroscience is really an important part of the science that we're going to be talking about today. The emotion. Charles Darwin defines gratitude as a universally experienced emotion. And we really did think that it was nothing more than being thankful at first. That simple emotion of feeling appreciation or thankfulness, but it really has become quite complex to understand. One way of understanding it is by what we've learned from functional MRIs, that we can observe brain regions in the brain that are activated when we are in that state of gratitude. And so we now know that gratitude is considered a moral emotion. So when someone does something for us that we view as a moral action, we are motivated to be moral, to have moral integrity. And that motivation to behave with moral integrity reinforces future moral actions, mine, yours, and others. There's a great law of reciprocity that we apply to gratitude. When someone does something good or kind towards us, we as humans want to reciprocate that. It doesn't have to go back to the person that did something kind for us. It can, but usually the ripple effect is that we as humans want other people to experience that same sense of elevation when we feel the kindness and generosity of others. So that that moral emotion is one that really can ground us in how we behave as humans, how we are tapping into our into humanity. It's also a navigation system. When we practice gratitude, we actually are reminded of how important life is and what really is important to us. We can get caught up in so many little details that in the big picture really doesn't improve our life, but they're always there, right? If we feel that things aren't right, we tend to start ruminating on what's not working. And if we practice that gratitude, that navigation system reminds us, oh, yes, what really is important to me are the people in my life, the experiences in my life, the beautiful sunrise, the beautiful sunset that we see. Again, those small things that we can easily overlook because of how complex and how disruptive things are in the world. It's also a fuel system. So when we practice gratitude, we tap into our parasympathetic nervous system, and that begins to calm us down. We can think clearly. We take those 2 minutes, if you will, of being able to practice some mindful breathing, slowing down the sense of what we have to do, what we need to do, what we should do. But it also motivates us to accomplish goals. There's a release of neurochemicals while we're practicing gratitude, such as serotonin, that helps us accomplish our goals. It motivates us. It gives us more willingness to do what we need to do. And there's also the release of dopamine, which makes us feel good, makes us feel good about who we are and what we're focused on and what we can bring to others, what we can bring to the world. It is a opportunity, if you will, to take a look at what we might look past every day, especially in the world where we live in. As if there was a physical others were not appreciated, were not valued for the contributions that we make. That impulse, that pain center impulse, is long lasting. And so we get into this rumination. So we think about how we are not appreciated for what we do. We take that home. It's the last thing that we think about before we go to sleep. It's the first thing we think about when we wake up. And the stress from the day before, the release of the stress hormone cortisol, well, that's in our bloodstream for at least 24 hours. So if you were stressed yesterday, you woke up today with that cortisol still in your bloodstream. If you're more stressed today, it's going to be carried over until tomorrow. And that's part of the reason why taking this emotion of gratitude and really putting some practice to what we do allows us to block the release of that stress hormone. Some of the studies show that we can block up to 23% of the release of cortisol in our bloodstream by practicing gratitude. And we also know by looking at our brain under functional MRI that it activates parts of the brain, and we're not quite sure entirely why, but we see that it activates regions of the brain that have to do with moral cognition and fairness and pro social behaviors. And a perspective of others. You know, there's that saying, walk in my shoes. When we are in the sustained practice of gratitude or cultivating a practice of gratitude, we really are able to take into perspective the feelings of others. So I'm talking about practicing gratitude, and I want to talk about three ways. One is reflective, reflecting on something that you are grateful for, someone, some experience. And that could be 2 minutes before you walk out the door, putting your hand on your heart and thinking about one thing that you're grateful for and why and how have you benefited. Another way of practicing is expressing it. And this can be verbally, this can be in writing, this can be one-on-one with an individual, or it can be in front of others. If you're expressing gratitude at work and expressing it in your teams, not only does the individual that you are expressing gratitude towards feel that sense of elevation, but our mirror neurons help everybody feel that same sense of elevation. Now, some people don't like that attention in front of a group. And so it's important to know when we are expressing gratitude to someone, how does that someone want to receive our expression of gratitude? Sometimes a note, very private conversation is much more meaningful than if it's done in the presence of others. And another way is responsive practice. So what I hear, long before the pandemic, is when somebody says, "Thank you for helping me today," or "Thank you for taking care of Mr. Smith. I was busy with another patient." The refrain I often hear is, "You don't have to thank me. I'm just doing my job." Yes, and while we're doing our job, it's really important to know that people see how we contribute to what it is that we're trying to accomplish. What I am seeing during the pandemic, when people are uncomfortable receiving gratitude, I'm seeing that there is guilt, a non-contributor guilt, which means, wait a minute, I wasn't working with COVID patients. I wasn't working with the really difficult diseases. So don't thank me. I'm not worthy of being thanked for what I'm doing. And so sometimes when someone is not able to respond, one of the things that I suggest is if you can't accept that, think about what does that say about the individual that's expressing gratitude to you. If you think that this is your job, you're only doing what you're supposed to do, turn it around to think about what does that say about the individual that is expressing gratitude towards me. Often it says, you see me, you care about me. We're connected together by the work that we do. So those are three ways to kind of think of the practice itself. I'm going to check on my time. I won't go through all of these, but I think these are maybe if you can take a picture of the screen. There are guidelines for individual practice. There's also guidelines for practicing in an organization, but all that I'm talking about today really starts with us individually, where we take what we know about practicing gratitude and build different types of techniques that work for us. So, journaling is often what we hear as a way of practicing gratitude. And sometimes people start to journal every day and it becomes a chore. So I often hear I couldn't keep up the journaling. What the research shows is that we don't have to do it every day. Some people do, and they love that, but we really need to do it only up to 3 times a day. I practice gratitude once a week. I take 30 minutes, I plug it into my calendar. I don't schedule anything else. I take that 30 minutes and I do journal Friday mornings at 7:30 a.m. That's my time. And I can fill many pages in those 30 minutes of capturing what I'm really grateful for. Remember the bad is another practice. And this isn't to surface traumatic memories, but we've all gone through challenging times in our life. And so this practice is to say, remember that time when I was really having a difficult time, and look where I am today. And when I look back, I can see people and resources that helped me get to where I am today. And then we can go into how do we express gratitude towards those people that helped us through that difficult time. Maybe we did already, and maybe we can do so again to remind them that they made a difference in our life. Consider the absence of positivity. What would it be like if we didn't have our significant other, our best friend, our teammate that we have a great bond with? And so it's not to dwell on the negative, but what would we be missing in our life if we didn't have these people, and how can we express gratitude towards them? Grateful processing is another technique. This looks at what's an open memory that keeps resurfacing over and over again in our mind. This is not related to shame or trauma or guilt. Maybe it's related to a position that you really wanted and you didn't get it, or a promotion that you were working hard towards and you didn't get it. And those memories keep resurfacing. And grateful processing says, okay, that that really was an awful thing to go through, but did it help me grow? How did I grow? What strengths did I did I find that allowed me to get through that situation, that challenge today? And how can I be grateful for it? Writing a letter of gratitude to someone is really important. Scholars say that we should write between 250 and 300 words to express gratitude to someone that's really made a difference in our life. My recommendation is that you capture what they did, how you benefited, why that was meaningful, and what were the possible sacrifices made on your behalf. And when you write that letter, call the individual, set up a time to meet with them, and read the letter to them. Don't mail it, don't email it, read it to them. So micro practices very quickly before while you're Purelling your hand sanitizer, while you're doing that, take those 30 seconds and think about one person that you're grateful for and why you're grateful that you have them in your life. However you express it, however you practice it, the key is to be very specific in how you express gratitude. Why, again, why is it meaningful? How have you benefited? And what were their specific actions that they took? And I always like to include thank the invisible people. We walk past invisible people every day that in some way they contribute to our world, our community, our institution, our neighborhood. And yes, 24/7 distractions keeps us focused on what we need to do next. And so one of the practices to really look at the people that are contributing to our communities, what would our community be like without them? And then when we see them, to really express gratitude to them as to the difference that you see them making. And it is not a competitive sport. Practicing gratitude is not about what I have that someone else does not. So how are we on time? In closing, we talked about the science, the positive psychology, which leads to human flourishing, gratitude that gives us these meaningful results, whether it's our own health and well-being, what the relationships that we have, our performance at work, our engagement of staff and employees, and the neuroplasticity. The more that we practice using gratitude, using our strength of gratitude, the stronger those neural pathways become. And one of the things that I like to pass on to as many people as possible that are going to be viewing this webinar, even in the future, is this grid. So if you can imagine these 4 quadrants, what is it that you'd like to learn more of? If you're a leader, what would you like to learn more about bringing gratitude into the workplace? What is it that you want to start? Maybe there's a gratitude practice that we just talked about that you want to be able to create more of a regular practice around. And what is it that you want to stop? Sometimes what I hear is, I want to stop complaining so much. And what do I want to continue? What are you already doing in terms of developing strengths and practicing gratitude and reframing where we know we're going to go to the negative, trying to that practice of reframing. So I'm going to stop there. This is all the information that you have if you want to connect with me further. And Labiba, I'm happy to close out the presentation now and see if there are questions or responses from anybody that's observing.
Thank you, ma'am. Um, so thank you, ma'am, for such insightful knowledges. Now, I think we have some questions from the audience, and everyone present whoever is listening to us, you can ask your questions anytime in the comment box, and we will try to answer that. So our first question is like, uh, what will you say about the gratitude practice in the professional settings, for example in the medical profession, particularly while thriving for excellence and fulfilling duty of care at the same time? How can you express gratitude?
Yeah, well, in organizations, one of the things that I recommend is, where can you create a practice that is something that you do on a regular basis. So I have clients that use a gratitude practice at the beginning of their safety huddles. And that is recognizing somebody in the huddle, appreciating something that they had done maybe the day before, or wrapping up a safety huddle by saying, we're grateful for what we are able to do today, how we can support each other. That might be one way of doing it. Or at the beginning of any meeting, whether it's Zoom or in person, putting that on the agenda of recognizing teamwork, recognizing something that worked really well, and making sure that it's more than just, hey, thank you for taking care of that, but going into that specificity of what was done, what was the behavior, what was the outcome, why was that meaningful, and how did you, or maybe the patient or the family or the organization, benefit from that. Sometimes one of the best things to do, Labiba, is to ask the team how they believe they could bring more of the work and gratitude into their teamwork, because they have ideas, and it's often their ideas that they will be more willing to continue. Sometimes I've had people tell me that they take a walk during a lunch break or during some sort of break with a coworker, and use that time to express gratitude towards each other. Or during that walk, to be able to stand back and take a look at their environment and what in their environment do they feel most grateful for. So really tapping into those individuals and finding out how do they want to bring gratitude into the culture, how do they wish to receive gratitude, sentiments of gratitude. Just a few ways of doing that. I also suggest that we look at policies and practices that are already present in an organization and see how some of the science, some of these evidence-based methodologies can help improve those processes in place. One study I saw was an intranet where just the employees could go and express gratitude to each other's, to other people in other departments. So that was going out of their department, out of their unit, if you will, to other areas of the hospital or the environment, and be able to share that. Few ideas. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, I think, yeah, that's really very helpful. Yeah, you can actually do that. We can actually do that in any profession. Also in the student life, it's so full of hassle.
Yeah,
Well, we have
absolutely.
another question.
Okay.
That would be, what would be the first step for gratitude for the people struggling with depression, especially who struggle to find the very first thing to be grateful for? How can they
Mm,
start expressing gratitude?
yeah. Well, that's a great question. And sometimes, sometimes we try to tell the person that's struggling with depression that it's going to get better and it's not as bad as you think it is. And that certainly does no good. That person begins to feel guilty because they're being told that what they're feeling isn't something they should be feeling. And so to to start, I would just recommend being there with that individual, listening to them. You may not We may not be able to fully understand what they are experiencing, but by being present, the individual begins to feel that they're happy you're there. They do begin to feel that sense of, oh, gosh, I'm really grateful that you took the time to listen to me, or that you didn't say anything. You just were present. And that begins to tap into the slightest degree of being grateful. It's also helpful if the individual is open to it. For if I'm talking with someone who I know is struggling with depression, to express to them why I'm grateful that we're together at this moment. And if there's a history with the individual, to think back to some of the things that we have done together and express gratitude as to why they were in my life for whatever it was. So again, there's this connection that happens when we are expressing gratitude, feeling gratitude that's reciprocal. So baby steps, right? Nothing's going to happen overnight. And sometimes it may be, we might want to be able to say to the individual, why don't you just do this? But that works against the relationship, that works against helping that individual start to heal. And it might just be giving them a journal. And
Yeah.
I had someone the other day that received a journal of mine, put it in their drawer, didn't think about it for months. And one day, for some reason, opened the drawer, took out the journal, and began to journal what they're grateful for. So timing. I mean, isn't there a proverb that says when the student is ready, the teacher appears? So being present and patient, I think, is some of the best things that I can recommend.
Oh, thank you. Now, I mean, like, you have a very busy life and you have to do a lot of things. So, how do you express gratitude to the people around you? I mean, how do you manage time for this? I mean, juggling all the things, and after that, how do you do that?
Well, it is one of it's trouble. It's really, there's so many things for everybody, not just me. We all have 24/7 distractions, which keeps us from doing whatever we would like to do to practice. That's why for me, I put it into my calendar that Friday morning from 7:30 a.m. to 8 a.m. I have my sitting area. I go to a special place. I have a special chair by a window. I have my pens with me, and that's where I actually do the journaling. But one of the other things that I do is, whether it's in my office or the kitchen or in the car, I put little visual cues that remind me of what I'm grateful for. So I can look up now and I look at a painting that somebody sent to me, and I look at that. It's beautiful. The artwork is, and I'm so grateful to the individual that created that for me. And I'll often take a look at that and send her a text message thanking her for her gift to me, or family pictures, or a vacation picture that I have. And I have a video that constantly repeats pictures, and when I glance at that, I can certainly find something to be thankful for. So visual cues, journaling. One of the things that I just recently spoke about was taking an awe walk, AWE, and really taking a walk and looking at, what am I hearing, what am I smelling, what am I seeing, that it's so easy to overlook because I'm walking to get to somewhere, right? And then and being able in your heart to reflect on, how can I be grateful because it's a beautiful sky, or there's a beautiful flower, that the smallest thing to practice, and just making it more available wherever we are, and whether it's at work, at home, in the neighborhood.
Oh, that's great, especially for the young ones who we are just stepping in the professional life. That's so
Yes.
many to learn from you. Thank you, Linda, for all the things that you say today. So I think we are at the edge of our time. We have to wrap it up now. Thank you, everyone, for staying with us. Thank you, Linda, again for being here with us. So this marks the end of our winter webinar series. So, people, everyone who are listening to us, you can contact us via social media or email or anything. And please be with us. Thank you for supporting us. Thank you for everyone who was involved throughout every part of this series. Thank you to all the speakers, all the volunteers, all the audiences. It was a great journey. Thank you to Mashurul Foundation for arranging such a great series. So I guess we will be seeing each other again someday with
Thank you
something great.
so much. Take care, everyone. Loving kindness to you.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
So that was it. Thank you, everyone. Bye bye.
Thank you very much. I have just turned off the Facebook Live, so we are not live anymore, just to let you know. And also, I am so sorry we got disconnected 3 times. So on Facebook, there will be some parts which are probably missed out, but I hope that in the recorded version, we have the entire thing recorded. So when we will be publish it on YouTube, I hope, I mean, once we done the processing, I hope that everything is clear over there.
Yeah.
And thank you so much again, Linda. And I mean, it's definitely, I mean, I think again that I'm really grateful that you agreed to do this with us, despite being such a, I mean, world-renowned speaker and a researcher and such an esteemed uh, human being still agreeing to do this with us. Of course, we will definitely like to at some point maybe arrange a workshop on gratitude if you have time once we progress a little bit with our foundation. I think especially for the professionals, it will help a lot
Love it.
to actually learn do some tutorials and learn from you uh, not only on the starting part, also on the sustaining part, because then frustration gets into you, and then
Yeah,
how do you have some boosters to have that gratitude practice back in your life.
love it. Love that
And
term
Lalibad,
booster.
thank you so much again.
Thank you so much. I look forward to staying in touch.
Same here. Of course, I hope that we all will be staying in touch. I think the line will get disconnect any moment now. So, so let's just say goodbye until next time.
Thank you,
Mwah.
everyone.
Goodbye. Best to you all.
Oh, thank you,
Thank you
Linda.
so much.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Ma'am, thank you.